Hi friends, I welcome you to today's discussion with regard to MCQs pertaining to finance related current affairs for upcoming RBI Grade B examination. Now the topic which we are going to discuss today, it pertains to guidelines on merchant acquiring business with regard to the regional rural banks. So friends, let's start our discussion with the MCQs on this particular topic and let's try to analyze the different aspects of this particular notification. Let's start with the first question. In RBI's recently issued notification dated Feb 6, 2020 pertaining to guidelines on merchant acquiring business, it has been decided to allow which of the following categories of banks to act as merchant acquiring banks using Aadhaar Pay, Bhim app and POS terminals. Options are regional rural banks, payment banks, cooperative banks, credit societies or none of the above. So friends, this notification, it draws attention to the para second point 7 of the statement on developmental and regulatory policies issued along with 6 bi-monthly monetary policy statement 2019-20. Now as per this para, it has been decided to allow RRBs to act as merchant acquiring banks using Aadhaar Pay, Bhim app and POS terminals. So friends, in this regard, now the RRBs, they can allow their clients who are merchants, who are businessmen, to set up the POS terminals and to set up the Aadhaar Pay Bhim app payment system. And now the customers of these banks, the merchants, they can accept payments from the customers using these particular means, using the cards or using the cashless Aadhaar authentication modes. Now, all RRBs which intend to act as merchant acquiring banks with regard to the Aadhaar Pay Bhim app shall be permitted to deploy their own devices subject to fulfilling the conditions specified in the notification. So all the RRBs, they are permitted to deploy the devices for accepting the payments using the Aadhaar Bhim Pay app and the POS terminals, but they have to fulfill certain conditions which have been specified in this particular notification. So my dear friends, based on our discussion on the previous slide, now we can easily answer this one, that recently regional rural banks, they have been decided to allow to act as the merchant acquiring banks using Aadhaar Pay, Bhim app and the POS terminals as per the recently issued RBI notification. So clearly the answer to this question is option number A. Now moving on to the second question, which of the following is incorrect in the context of regional rural banks? Options are RRBs are financial institutions which ensure adequate credit for agriculture and other rural sectors. Regional rural banks were set up on the basis of the recommendations of the Narsimham Working Group. The first regional rural bank, Pratham Gramin Bank, was set up on 2nd October 2005. All are incorrect or none is incorrect. So this question is basically with regard to the basic concept of regional rural banks. Let us just take a quick glance at what are the regional rural banks or RRBs. So friends, RRBs are basically financial institutions which ensure adequate credit for agriculture and other rural sectors. Regional rural banks, they were set up on the basis of the recommendations of the Narsimham Working Group 1975 and after the legislation of the Regional Rural Banks Act 1976. So they are not something which are very recent, they date back to 1970s. The first regional rural bank, Pratham Gramin Bank, was set up on 2nd October 1975. Now the equity or the money which is going to be deployed in a regional rural bank, the capital of the regional rural bank is held by central government, concerned state government in which the RRB is located, and the sponsor bank which is sponsoring the concerned RRB in the proportion of 50:15:35. So this is the basic aspect with regard to RRBs. We have to primarily remember that they are set up to ensure adequate credit for agriculture and rural sector. So friends, based on our discussion on the previous slide, now we can easily answer that the regional rural banks, they were set up on the first RRB was set up on 2nd October 1975 and not 2005. So clearly the answer to this question is option number C. Now moving on to the next question. Bhim Aadhaar Pay enables merchants to receive digital payments from the customers over the counter through Aadhaar authentication. For this purpose, options are: only customers should have the Aadhaar linked to their bank account. Only merchant should have the Aadhaar linked to their bank account. Both customer and merchant should have their Aadhaar linked to their bank account. Neither customer nor merchant should have their Aadhaar linked to their bank account, or none of the above. Now let's also briefly learn about the Aadhaar Pay Bhim app. Now this Bhim Aadhaar Pay, it enables the merchants to receive digital payments from the customers over the counter through Aadhaar authentication. So if the bank accounts of the customers and the merchants, they are both linked to their Aadhaar, then in this particular case, the transactions can be automatically done through Aadhaar authentication. The amount will be automatically deducted from the bank after you do this Aadhaar authentication using your biometric or punching your fingerprint. Now basically this system allows for any merchant associated with any acquiring bank which is there on the Bhim Aadhaar Pay to accept payment from customer of any of the bank by authenticating the customer's biometrics as we have just discussed. So basically the customer who has a bank account linked to his or her Aadhaar, it can go to this particular merchant who has this particular system of accepting payments using Aadhaar authentication. Now the customer simply needs to punch their fingerprint, their biometric, their card, and automatically the money is going to be deducted from the account. Now, in order to effect this particular system, a merchant should have an Android mobile with Bhim Aadhaar app and certified biometric scanner in order to punch the fingerprint, attached with mobile phone, kiosk tablet on USB port, or micro ATM POS or MPOS. So this is basically the infrastructure which is required, and this is going to be provided by the acquiring bank or RRBs in this particular case. Now, as we've already learned that both the customers and merchants should have their Aadhaar linked to their bank account, then only this particular system is going to be possible for accepting the payments. So friends, based on our discussion on the previous slide with regard to Bhim Aadhaar Pay, now we have learned that for the purpose of using this particular system, both customer and merchant should have their Aadhaar linked to their bank account. So clearly the answer to this particular question is going to be option number C. Next question. In RBI's recently issued notification dated Feb 6, 2020 pertaining to guidelines on merchant acquiring business, it has been decided to allow regional rural banks to act as merchant acquiring banks using Aadhaar Pay Bhim app and POS terminals. To be eligible, RRBs should satisfy which of the following conditions? Options are: the bank's IT systems and CBS should have been subjected to an IS audit not earlier than 6 months from the date of application to confirm that the system is adequately secure. The bank should have a board approved policy on merchant acquisition for card transactions. There should not be any restrictions imposed on the bank for accepting deposits, withdrawals by RBI. No penalty should have been imposed in the last 2 financial years. All of the above conditions are required to be fulfilled. Now let's talk about the additional conditions which are required to be complied with by the RRBs which wish to set up the merchant acquisition business. Now in this regard, these conditions, they include that the bank's IT systems and the CBS system, the core banking system, should have been subjected to an IS audit or information system audit not earlier than 6 months from the date of application to confirm that the system is adequately secure. So first and foremost, the RRBs should have been subjected to an IS audit before making an application to RBI in this regard. Now the banks must ensure necessary infrastructure for application development, safety and security of the transactions and handling of the customer grievance. So the safety and security is important, and the customer grievances are also required to be handled. This is also important. Customer grievance redressal mechanism duly approved by the bank's board should be in place. Further, the bank should have a board approved policy on merchant acquisition for card transactions, and then there should not be any restrictions imposed on the bank for accepting deposits or withdrawals by RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Also, no penalty should have been imposed in the last 2 financial years on the concerned regional rural bank. So basically these are the conditions which are there in place to make sure that the RBI, which is RRB, which is making the application is genuine, is worthy of setting this particular infrastructure. So friends, based on our discussion on the previous slide, now we can easily answer this one, that all of the above conditions, they're required to be fulfilled for the purpose of the RRBs to act as the merchant acquiring banks using the Aadhaar, Pay Bhim app and POS terminals. So answer here is going to be option number E. Now moving on to the last question for today. In RBI's recently issued notification dated Feb 6, 2020 pertaining to guidelines on merchant acquiring business, it has been decided to allow RRBs to act as merchant acquiring banks using Aadhaar Pay and POS. To be eligible, RRBs should have the net NPA below. Options are 3%, 4%, 5%, 6% or none of the above. Now also there is certain financial conditions which are required to be complied with by the regional rural bank. So with regard to the financial conditions, the notification states that in the preceding financial year, the RRB should have, options are net worth of rupees 100 crore or more as on 31st March of the preceding financial year, minimum CRAR at 9%. So minimum capital adequacy ratio is 9%. And they should also have the net non-performing assets net NPA below 5%. Now again, this is a check with regard to the RRBs to make sure that they are financially sound and they can handle the merchant acquisition business. So friends, based on our discussion, we can easily answer this particular question, that RRBs should have the net NPA below 5% for the purpose of setting up the merchant acquiring business as per the recent RBI notification. So clearly the answer is going to be option number C. So here we end this session. Thank you friends for watching this video and stay tuned for more updates.